Hello, everyone. I'm Kamraun.
And I'm Billy. Welcome to the HorseFrog Podcast, Bulgaria's sixth most popular podcast, home of your two favorite professional digressors and the creators of the Malazan Brotherhood.
For clarity, it's in the category books. So we're Bulgaria's sixth most popular book podcast.
Okay, oh, sorry.
I'm sure that probably Joe Rogan or some other rather large podcast is the number one podcast.
Oh, yes. I did not mean to drop off book.
Today, we will be discussing Book 3, Chapter 17 of Memories of Ice, a novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. This is part 1 of our coverage of this chapter.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It is not a book review, and it's most definitely not a replacement to reading the books. Both Kamraun and I know that this is the best fantasy story ever written, and we want to share our love of this series with you.
We will be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those that have not read the books. We'll try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
Now, quick warning, today's episode contains extreme violence, and I do mean it this time. Extreme, and thus, it's not suitable for children.
Our show is listener supported. If you would like to support us, we'd really appreciate that. You can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we're posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
Also, we would really like to hear from you, so send any feedback or comments that you have to contact@horsefrogproductions.com.
Last week, we were discussing Itkovian not recognizing the Cap'n recruit when he woke up after getting healed. And we received a comment from Kurt, last name redacted, on YouTube, saying that he interpreted this situation as the transformation that she's gone through after experiencing everything since the beginning of the book. And I could see that.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff that's gone on, and I imagine looks a lot older just from the harrowing experiences.
Yeah, the baptism of fire. I mean, dude, please.
The wing that she was accompanying, almost all of them died, I think, initially, right?
Yeah.
Well, no, that's not correct. A bunch of them died, but the ones that were protecting her both gave their lives to see her through that.
The first time we met her, you mean? Yeah. On the Kachin Shamal encounter? Yeah.
Yep.
That's right.
Separately, I think it was the week before that, we forgot how old the Malazan Empire was. And it's currently the 106th year since it was founded, and it is the 10th year of Lassine's reign.
Okay.
And this conversation was related to how many campaigns a member of the Malazan military may have been a part of. If you remember, we were talking about the efficacy of the Grey Swords that probably had to be active significantly more than a standing army in combat. I had said, well, depending on the number of campaigns that a Malazan veteran was part of, they could have been active their entire military career.
Right.
Which still may be true, but I think we had posited that it was only around 20 years at that point, which is not factually true. There's been a lot of stuff going on. All right. Well, thanks for reaching out, Kurt. We appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, Kurt. We appreciate that.
All right, Billy, I think you would like to bring up a topic today.
I would like to bring up something, yes. Last week we found this out. I forgot to bring this up. We were just going to mention the loss of the great Gene Hackman, an actor I really admit he had a big impact on me. He had a lot of good movies. What's funny, I watched Royal Tenenbaums because I needed to see a Hackman movie. And that movie always makes me feel good because I love that he's such a rascal in that movie. And that redemption arc is just fantastic, dude. But the ending, I usually get a little misty, but Kamraun, I wept because it was the funeral of Gene Hackman's character, dude. And I was like, wow, it really broke me down. I've never really broke down watching a movie like that, but it was fantastic, though.
That's a really interesting point. So that was like your release, saying goodbye to him.
It really was. Yeah, because I did not realize how many movies I have that he's in. I mean, think about this. One of the first movies I would have seen him in and not known it is Young Frankenstein.
Who is he in Young Frankenstein?
He's the blind hermit.
Okay.
You know who I'm talking about, right? He's
Yeah.
The blind hermit. Dude, that's Gene Hackman, dude. And that's just right at the same. I mean, I kid you not. I think he may have done Superman that same year, but he did a lot of great ones, dude. All of those are fantastic. I just finally got my dad to watch The French Connection here about a month before Hackman died. My dad was like, dude, that's a great movie. I'm like, dude, I was an infant when that movie came out. Why haven't you seen it? Because he loved Hackman anyhow. So what about you?
Crimson Tide was probably because he was across from Denzel in that, and they're both amazing actors. They really played off each other well in that.
Yeah.
Royal Tenenbaums, that's a really good case.
Yeah, that's a good comedy. So as Get Shorty, what a great comedy. He's such a scumbag in that one, too.
Yes.
He's so... When he played Scumbags, he was one of the funniest guys who wasn't a comic actor. you know?
Mm.
And when he was the best Lex Luthor. Come on. I mean,
Yeah, it was pretty good. Yeah, well, who else have we had? Jesse Eisenberg is the other. Kevin Spacey. I thought Kevin Spacey did a pretty good job.
I thought Kevin was good. I enjoyed that one.
He just can be so menacing. But Gene Hackman had the capability of being so intimidating when he was being serious.
It's Unforgiven, in particular. Dude, he was really menacing in that one, remember?
Yeah.
Especially at that end. Oh, good golly, he's scary. When he was scary, he was scary.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy that you could see leading as a sergeant or something. You take him very seriously. He just has that persona. Which, when you juxtapose that with his comedic roles, it's interesting that you can go back and forth like that, where you have that range.
I'm almost curious if they did him like, I don't know if you know the story about George C. Scott and Strangelove. You know, you've seen Dr. Strangelove, right?
Mm-hmm.
His role is comedic and over the top. George C. Scott despised that and never wanted any of that stuff, and was promised all these comedic takes basically would not be in the film. So I don't think that's that way with Hackman. I think Hackman had a good sense of humor but I just, man, but yeah, what a loss though, huh?
Yeah, I heard it and I was pretty sad. You know, we're starting to lose, like Sean Connery was a couple years ago, you know, a lot of these guys that are that age. Harrison Ford's getting up there.
Clint Eastwood.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Dude, he's in his 90s also. I mean, Hackman was 95. I mean, he made it to 95. That's pretty daggone impressive.
The circumstances around what happened were pretty bad. I don't want to go into detail here, but you know, I feel pretty bad for the situation.
I think that's what made me so sad more than anything, Kamraun, in all honesty. Hearing that, especially at the end when you realize what it kind of really all said and done was, like, oh, good golly, that's really sad. That really made it more, the pathos was a lot rougher. So,
yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, who would he be in the Malazan universe? Any idea?
I'd have to put some serious thought into that, because I wouldn't want to just pick something off the top of my head.
No. I just didn't know if you had something in mind.
No, I had never really considered him for any of the characters, because
he's been retired for 20 plus years.
Yeah, I think I do gravitate towards a lot of English actors for some reason for roles that
me too.
pick for this. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the way we're always force-fed fantasy movies with English accents. Yes. I mean, the knights and everything were from the Europe area, right? We didn't have them in the United States. We had cowboys here, you know? So I guess it makes sense in a way, right? A French or English, maybe some Germanic stuff.
I'm always way happier with the Germans and the English in particular over the you meant to bleep that. Oh.
All right, well, rest in peace, Gene Hackman.
R.I.P. Gene.
Will be missed.
Yes, will be missed.
All right, chapter 17, part 1. The chapter begins with a quote, "What the soul can house, flesh cannot fathom," end quote. And this was from The Reeve of Faner by Immerek, the first destriant. And I have a little story here. The other day, my youngest child was watching YouTube, and there was a video that had a Sun Tzu quote that struck him. He immediately paused the video and wrote down this quote. "If the mind is willing, the flesh could go on and on without many things," end quote. This quote that starts out this chapter is fairly close to this, to me.
Yeah, and you're right.
It just struck me as adjacent to that. It cracks me up that he wrote this quote down, dude.
I love that he wrote it down. When I started reading the first part, I'm like, what? I was thinking, my mind goes immediately to, if you will it, it is their dream. What? If you will it, it is their dream. Theodore Herzl, State of the Union Address, 1963. It's like, oh, my word. It's starting early.
Yeah. Hot, fevered, the pebbled skin moved like a damp rock-filled sack. The matron's body exuded an acrid oil. It had permeated Tock's clothes. He slid between folds of flesh as the huge, bloated Kachin Chamal shifted about on the gritty floor. Massive arms wrapped around him in a fierce embrace. This situation right here is so terrible. It's one of the worst things we've seen thus far in the books. You'd almost rather be in Dragnapur over this.
I was going to say, at least you get some breathing room in Dragnapur.
Yeah.
Not much,
I mean, you might be there for all eternity, but you're just pulling the wagon.
Yeah, you're not being ground to powder. You're not being ground to powder all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, let's get to that part.
Ooh, I think you're right.
Darkness commanded the cave. The glimmers of light he saw were born within his mind, illusions that might have been memories. Torn, fragmented scenes of yellow-grassed low hills beneath warm sunlight. Figures caught at the very edge of his vision. Some wore masks. One was naught but dead skin stretched over robust bone. Another was beauty, perfection. He believed in none of them. Their faces were the faces of his madness, looming ever closer, hovering at his shoulder. I was thinking a bit about this description of Lady Envy, how she embodies physical perfection, but at the same time is full of a darkness inside. We've seen her childish and petulant behavior a little bit so far, and her wrath is no small thing. I appreciate the contrast between the two.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love it. That's really nicely stated too, about the fact that she's absolute perfection. She looks like, but yeah, her wrath is perfection. In fact, maybe she's good at that too.
Yeah, from what we've heard, it's pretty bad. We haven't seen it up close, but it can shake people from quite far away, so it must be very impactful.
Something that is powerful enough to keep a Kachin Shamal in step with itself. Like I said, we think it's a Jagut driving this Panyan seer, but whatever's going on, it's afraid of her. It's worried by her, I guess. That says a lot about her power.
Does the matron know about her?
I don't.
Does it mention later in this section here that she gets scared?
Oh, I'm not sure about that. I'm just talking about the fact that this Jagut, or whatever, the Panyan seer is holding the Kachin Shamal matron in some kind of bondage somehow. That's what I'm assuming is going on there, right?
It's hard to say what their relationship is like, because he was the one in her embrace for a while.
Right. He switched places. So has he been draining her power? Kind of like using it somehow, folding it, molding it?
That's hard to say. Maybe the commands to the Kel hunters, maybe he's using her as a conduit to command them. Because if she's really lost her mind, she's not the one that's going to be able to tell them what to do.
That's true.
So maybe through her, he's channeling the commands to them.
Yeah, okay. Live along, sir.
Okay, all right. When sleep took talk, he dreamed of wolves. Hunting, not to feed, but to deliver something else. He knew not what. The quarry wandered alone. The quarry fled when it saw him. Brothers and sisters at his side he pursued, relentless, leagues passing effortlessly beneath his paws. The small frightened creature could not elude them. He and his kin drew nearer, exhausting it against the slopes of hills, until finally it faltered, then collapsed. They surrounded it. As they closed in to deliver what was to be delivered, the quarry vanished. Shock, then despair. He and his kin would circle the spot where she'd lain. Heads lifted skyward, mournful howls issuing from their throats, howling without surcease, until Tok the Younger blinked awake, in the embrace of the matron. She would tighten her hold then, whimpering, prodding the back of his neck with a fanged snout, her breath like sugared milk. So, there is a connection between the Maib and Tok's dreams.
Wow, that is very interesting. So he's haunting her dreams?
It sounds like he's along for the ride for whatever's going on there. He's not really in control, I don't think.
No. I don't think I'm in control, but yeah, he's there, though. He's riding the wolf, I guess. That she's being chased by, or thinks she's being, whatever's going on there. I think there's a misunderstanding, I'm assuming, but I'm not sure what the misunderstanding is. I can't remember.
Right. The cycles of Tok's life. Sleep, then wakefulness, punctuated by hallucinations. Delusions of being a babe in his mother's arms, suckling at her breast. The matron possessed no breasts, so he knew these to be delusions, yet was sustained by them nonetheless. And times when he began voiding his bladder and bowels, and she held him out when he did this, so he fouled only himself. She would then lick him clean, a gesture that stripped him of his last shreds of dignity. Her embrace broke bones. The more he screamed with the pain, the tighter she held him. He had learned to suffer in silence. His bones knitted with preternatural swiftness, sometimes unevenly. He knew himself to be malformed, his chest, his hips, the blades of his shoulders. This situation just keeps getting worse. The breaking of the bones with the accelerated healing over and over has to be one of the worst core memories from this book. It's right up there with my dislike of the Tenascauri. It's truly horrific.
I do.
Welcome to Beyond the Text, the podcast where intellectual history comes to life. Dive into the minds of philosophers, historians, and thinkers who shape the world we live in today. Each episode, we unravel complex ideas, explore fascinating topics, and break down the big concepts you won't find in your average history book. Join Samuel Woodall and Jack Thompson every week for a journey into the heart of ideas. Subscribe now on your favourite platform, and let's go beyond the text together.
And for some reason, in my mind, though, as we read these are mercifully shorter passages than I remember. Because, I think that I always feel like this goes on a lot longer. I hope it doesn't go much longer because I love Talk. I don't know why I really like Talk. We don't really get to see him a whole lot. And every time we see him, he's thrust into this horrific situation and just endures. How's that, Sun Tzu? Sorry.
The mind is willing, apparently. Yeah, him and Perrin both. And to some degree, Felicin have been through the ringer in these books.
Yeah.
Probably the worst that I can think of everybody.
Yeah, absolutely agreed.
Maybe Hebrick as well. He's going through quite a bit.
Yeah, he's going through some weird stuff too, man.
Then there came the visitations, a ghostly face sheathed in the wrinkled visage of an old man. The hint of gleaming tusks took form within his mind, yellowed eyes that shone with glee fixed on his own. Familiar, those overlapping faces, but Talk was unable to take his recognition any further. The visitor would speak to him. They are trapped, my friend, all but the Talani Mass, who fear solitude. Why else would he not leave his companions? Swallowed in ice, helpless, frozen. The Segula, no need to fear them. Never was. I but played. And the woman, my rhymed beauteous statue, wolf and dog have vanished. Fled, I, the kin, brother of your eyes, fled. Tail between legs, hee. And again, your Malazan army is too late to save Kapustan. The city is mine. Your fellow soldiers are still a week away, my friend. We shall await them. We shall greet them as we greet all enemies. I will bring you the head of the Malazan general. I will bring you his cooked flesh, and we shall dine together, you and I, once more. How much blood can one world shed? Have you ever wondered, Talk the Younger? Shall we see? Let us see, then, you and I, and dear mother here. Oh, is that horror I see in her eyes? Some sanity still resides in her rotted brain, it seems. How unfortunate for her. And now, after a long absence, he returned once more. The false skin of the old man was taut against the unhuman visage. The tusks were visible as if through a transparent sheath. The eyes burned, but not this time with glee. He said, Deceit! They are not mortal beasts. How dare they assail my defenses? Here at the very gates. And now the Talani Mass has vanished. I can find him nowhere. Does he come as well? So be it. They shall not find you. We journey, the three of us, north, far beyond their reach. I have prepared another nest for you two. The inconvenience, but Talk no longer heard him. His mind had been snatched away. He saw brittle white sunlight, a painful glare shimmering from ice-clad mountains and valleys buried in rivers of snow. In the sky, wheeling condors. And then, far more immediate, there was smoke. Wooden structures shattered, stone walls tumbled. Figures running, screaming, crimson spattering the snow, filling the milky puddles of a gravel road. The point of view, eyes that saw through a red haze, shifted, swung to one side. A mottled black and gray hound kept pace, shoulders at eye level to the armored figures it was tearing into with blurred savagery. The creature was driving towards a second set of gates, an arched portal at the base of a towering fortress. None could stand before it. None could slow its momentum. Gray dust swirled from the hound's shoulders, swirled, spun, twisted into arms, legs gripping the creature's flanks. A bone-helmed head, torn fur, a ragged wing behind it. Raised high, a rippled sword the color of old blood. Talk thought, his bones are well, his flesh is not. My flesh is well, my bones are not. Are we brothers? Hound and rider, nightmare vision, struck the huge iron-banded gates. Do you take this as Toole is writing Gareth?
Yes. That is exactly what I'm seeing in my mind, sir.
That's pretty crazy.
It's awesome, isn't it?
Yeah.
That would be awesome to see.
It reminds me in World of Warcraft, the orcs, they ride these huge wolves.
Yeah.
I mean, Gareth's a dog, but still, it's a similar principle.
It's the Lord of the Rings. That's the wargs, right? Don't the orcs ride them?
Yeah, similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wood exploded. In the archway's gloom, terror plunged among a reeling knot of Seerdamen. Loping towards the breached portal, Talk rode his wolf's vision, saw into the shadows, where huge reptilian shapes stepped into view to either side of the hound and its undead rider. The Kell hunters raised their broad blades. Snarling, the wolf sprinted. His focus was the gate, every detail there sharp as broken glass, whilst all that lay to either side blurred. A shift of weight brought him to the Kell hunter closing from the hound and rider's left. The creature pivoted, sword slashing to intercept his charge. The wolf ducked beneath it, then surged upward, jaws wide. Leathery throat filled his mouth. His canines sank deep into lifeless flesh. Jaw muscles bunched. Bone cracked, then crumbled as the wolf inexorably closed its vice grip, even as the momentum of his charge drove the Kell hunter back onto his tail, crashing against a wall that shuddered with the impact. Upper and lower canines met. Jagged molars ground together, slicing through wood-like tendon and dry muscle. The wolf was severing the head from the body. The Kachin shook beneath him, spasmed. A flailing blade sliced into the wolf's right haunch. Talk and beast flinched at the pain, yet did not relent. The ornately helmed head fell back, away, thumped as it struck the slush-covered cobbles. Snarling, lifeless shreds snagged on his teeth, the wolf spun round. The hound crouched, spine hunched in a corner of the archway. Blood poured from it, alone to battle its wounds. The undead swordsman, Talk thought, my brother, was on his leather-wrapped feet now, his flint sword trading blows with the other Kell hunter's twin blades, at speeds unimaginable. Chunks of the Kachin flew. A sword-bound forearm spun end over end to land near the flinching hound. The Kell hunter lurched back in the face of the onslaught. Shin bones snapped with a brittle report. The huge creature fell over, spraying slush out to all sides. The undead warrior clambered onto it, systematically swinging his sword to dismember the Kachin. It was a task swiftly completed. That's really impressive that he's able to solo that thing.
Absolutely, man. Take her down. That's awesome. And systematically dismembers it. It's like, wow. Quickly.
Yeah. Because Mok had help from Thurul and Senu when he single stroke beheaded that one that was charging him. Right. So to solo this, yes. I mean, Mok could probably solo one too, but we haven't seen it yet.
We have yet to witness.
Uh-huh. The wolf approached the wounded hound. The animal snapped a warning to stay away. Talk was suddenly blind, ripped away from the wolf's vision. Bitter winds tore at him, but the matron held him tight. On the move, swiftly. They traveled a warren, a path of riven ice. They were, he realized, fleeing Outlook, fleeing the fortress that had just been breached. Talk thought by Baeljag, and Gareth and Tool. Gareth, those wounds. A voice shrieked, "Silence!" The seer was with them, leading the way through Amtos Falak. The gift of clarity remained in Talk's mind. His laugh was a ragged gurgle. The seer shouted, "Shut up!" The entire warren shook to distant thunder, the sound of vast ice cracking, exploding in a conflagration of sorcery. Talk thought, Lady Envy, with us once more. The seer screamed. Reptilian arms clenched Talk. Bones cracked, splintered. Pain shoved him over a precipice. He thought, my kin, my brothers. He blacked out. Now, you had mentioned that the matron was afraid of Lady Envy, and I thought this was what you were referring to maybe, where Lady Envy is assaulting the warren, and they're fleeing through that warren, and she starts squeezing Talk harder. The matron starts squeezing Talk harder whenever those attacks occur.
That could be. I was talking more about the Banyan seer himself being afraid of, especially he was here giggling and laughing at first. Now on the return visit, these things seem to get a little bit more pressing, and then he's like running with Talk and the matron. So he's powerful enough to keep this matron. I don't know if it's a combination of their powers, because he's using Amtos Falak, which is Jagut, right? Straight up Jagut.
It is, yes.
Right? But yes, she would be afraid because she's pretty mindless. So if she's hearing all this stuff going on, and I'm sure she can sense that something's coming for them. With the matron, I mean, so she would probably be afraid too, because I mean, she just seems to be pretty mindless, and just lives in terror. But she has to exist for some reason. She must still be very powerful on the magic level, or whatever it is they do. I don't know. I don't know what the Kachin do. They're like the ants / alien kind of deal going on. I don't know what's up with them fellas. They're very foreign to me still.
Mm-hmm. I was also sad to see the toll that this assault has taken on both Gareth and Baeljag. They appear to be seriously injured.
Yeah, they have. But do you think that they've been hurt multiple times pretty bad on this journey here to the Banyan? I've kind of been functioning under the assumption that she just kind of heals everyone up after these encounters rather rudely. Do you think that that's what happens on things like when they get hurt?
I don't know if she heals them, but I do remember in one of the prior chapters, it was mentioned that it was taking a toll on them. Tool specifically looked a lot worse for wear the last time talk vision quested, I guess is the best way to say it. And then I think one of the animals might have also been hurt at that time.
Yeah, it's always, but I'm questioning if they're all getting worse for the wear. She's pushing them awful hard. Do you think it would make these Gareth and Baljag in particular, or would they make them unruly, meaner? Because I don't think they're not undead. Would being undead provide an immunity to some of the weird mental problems of healing, forced healing, if you could be force healed as undead? Is that possible?
I think so. We did see that reaction from Gareth when Baljag attempted to approach and Gareth snapped at him. So that's definitely a very animal type behavior, sentient animal, not some type of undead.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all I've got for that.
The fact that the Segula were missing through this sequence surprised me, and I wonder where they are.
They probably heard about all the lovely little boutiques and One-Eyed Cat and are just taking a long way to get here.
Of course, it was just a vacation. They're antiquing.
Exactly. Well, if they were this side of town, they'd be whining. They'd be hitting the wineries. So, the stuff with the mother or the matron kind of gets on me a little bit because I'm slightly claustrophobic, and I would rather be chained to a wall than have something be wrapped around me, smothering me like that. I think, that's just awful to me.
Yeah, so in jiu-jitsu, this happens quite frequently where people try and cover your face and smother you, and you have to get comfortable being in those situations. When you haven't had that happen to you before, as I hadn't before I started a couple years ago, it freaks you out. And you really have to build up a tolerance to it. But after a couple minutes, you get to stop. It's not all day, every day, for weeks and weeks and weeks. You don't know when it's going to end.
Yeah, if it's going to end.
I don't even know how bad. I mean, Talk basically forgot who he was. Doesn't even recognize some of his closest companions.
Yeah.
So his mind may be conscious, but I don't know how much of him is left in there. He has moments of clarity we see, but yeah, he's really on the verge of complete madness.
I think this whatever wolf riding he's doing is the biggest protection he has right now. He can kind of check out and go elsewhere for a little bit at a time. I think it's kind of helping him maintain.
He needs a wax switch firewall put into his brain.
Absolutely.
He needs a rigger. It'd be a rude awakening, waking up to all those broken bones and everything, but
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, man, terrible situation.
But dude, now I'm going to go way even deeper. Have you watched the show Severance? Or do you know about Severance?
No, I've heard about it.
I started watching it.
Do you want to cover it real quick so if people don't know about it?
Yeah, the idea on Apple TV is what it is. It's Severance. People go to work for this company. When they're implanted with something in their brain, and when they go to work, they don't know who they are in the real world. And when they get back into the real world, their real world people don't know who their work people are. There becomes a weird digression of these two people are basically schizophrenic in a weird way. They're going to work, and the poor people that are at work are like slaves because they're at work. They're never not at work. The work mind is always awake and is always at work. So I don't know where that's going, but that's going to be dark. I can guarantee you that.
That's a really interesting concept, actually.
Dude, it's Ben Stiller. It's fascinating. It's funny in some uncomfortable ways, but it's not funny.
Mm-hmm.
I think you'd dig it.
Yeah, that surprised me a little bit, but comedians, I think they have a really good grasp of human nature.
Dude,
so
agreed.
I think they can parse that pretty well.
Absolutely. It's good stuff. I've watched the first 2 or 3 episodes. Fantastic stuff so far.
Nice. I'm waiting for Reacher to be out before I start diving into that.
Agreed.
I made the mistake of watching it as they were coming out last year, and I was like, I have to wait a week.
Invincible ends next week, so I can do Invincible, and then I'm ready for Reacher. So you need to watch Invincible. That's a good animated show. Good show.
I only have so much time, Billy.
I get you.
Prioritize.
I got you. Moving along.
Thankfully, we are taken somewhere else. The night sky to the south was lit red. Though over a league distant, from the slope of the sparsely wooded hill, Capucin's death was plain to see, drawing the witnesses to silence apart from the rustle of armor and weapons, and the squelch of boots and moccasins in mud. Leaves dripped a steady susurration. The soaked humus filled the warm air with its fecundity. Somewhere nearby him, I'm sorry. The words that are making up this sentence.
Dude, I actually, that's one of my old notes from my first reading of this. To learn definitions, I write it again. And so I wrote fecundity. I'm like, fertile. It's like, dude, could you have just gone easier on me?
No, Billy, because if he had, then you wouldn't know glorious words like ochre and crepuscular and coruscating. Limed. All right, so no, he is not going to take it easy on you. You are going to learn.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Erikson. May I have another?
Let me try this sentence again. The soaked humus filled the warm air with its fecundity. Somewhere nearby, a man coughed. Captain Perrin drew a dagger and began scraping the mud from his boots. He had known what to expect at this moment, his first sight of the city. Humbrol Tar's scouts had brought word back earlier in the day. The siege was over. The Grey Swords might well have demanded an emperor's ransom for their services, but fire-charred, tooth-gnawed bones could not collect it. Even so, knowing what to expect did little to diminish the pathos of a dying city. Had those Grey Swords been Crimson Guard, the scene before Perrin might well be different. With the lone exception of Prince Kaz Devor's company of the Avowed, mercenaries were less than worthless as far as Perrin was concerned. Tough talk and little else. He thought, let's hope these children of Humbrol Tar have fared better. It did not seem likely. Pockets of resistance perhaps remained. Small knots of corners soldiers, knowing mercy was out of the question, would fight to the last. In alleys, in houses, in rooms. Kapustan's death throes would be protracted. He thought, then again, if these damned Barghast can actually manage a double time instead of this squabbling saunter, we might be able to adjust that particular fate's conclusion. Perrin turned at the arrival of his new commander, Trotz. Trotz's eyes glittered as he studied the burning city. He said, the rains have done little to dim the flames. Perrin said, perhaps it's not as bad as it looks. I can make out maybe 5 major fires. It could be worse. I've heard tales of firestorms. Trotz said, aye, we saw one from afar, in 7 cities once. I think I know what city he's referring to there.
As do I.
That would be the fire in Egatan.
Right.
And that would be the same fire that drove Grillin out of its depths.
Wow. That's kind of cool when you put that stuff together like that, man.
Little nugget of information just right in there.
Love it.
Perrin asked, what's Humbrol Tar had to say, War Chief? Do we pick our pace or do we just stand here? Trotz bared his filed teeth and said, he will send the Baran and the Akrata clan southeast. They are tasked with taking the landings and the floating bridges and barges. His own Sinan and the Gilk will stride towards Kapustan. The remaining clans will seize the Septarch's main supply camp, which lies between the landings and the city. Perrin said, that's all very well, but if we keep dawdling, Trotz said, Hitan and Kafal, Tar's children, are alive and not at risk, so the shouldermen insist. The bones are being protected by strange sorceries, strange yet profoundly powerful. There is... Perrin cut him off. Damn you, Trotz. People are dying down there. People are being devoured. Trotz's grin broadened. He said, thus, I have been given leave to lead my clan at a pace of my own choosing. Captain, are you eager to be the first among the white faces into Kapustan? Perrin growled under his breath. He felt a need to draw his sword, felt a need to deliver vengeance, to finally, after all this time, strike a blow against the Panyan Daman. Quick Ben, in those moments when he was lucid and not raving with fever, had made it clear that the Daman held dire secrets, and a malevolence stained its heart. The fact of the Teniscari was proof enough of that to Perrin's mind. But there was more to his need. He lived with pain. His stomach raged with spot fires. He had thrown up acidic bile and blood, revealing that truth to no one. The pain bound him within himself, and those bindings were getting tighter. He thought, and another truth, one I keep pushing away. She's haunting me, seeking my thoughts, but I'm not ready for her. Not yet. Not with my stomach aflame. It was no doubt madness, a delusion, but Perrin believed that the pain would relent. All would be well once more as soon as he delivered to the world the violence trapped within him. Folly or not, he clung to that belief. He thought, only then will these pressures relent. Only then. He was not ready to fail. Perrin muttered, call up the bridge burners then. We can be at the north gate inside of a bell. Trotz grunted and said, all 30 odd of us. Perrin said, well, damn if we can't shame these Barghast into some haste. Trotz said, this is your hope? Perrin glanced over at the man. He said, Hood take us all, Trotz. You are the one who asked Tar to grant you leave. Do you expect the 37 of us to retake Kapustan all on our own, with an unconscious mage in tow? Trotz, eyes thin to slits as he studied the city ahead, rolled his shoulders and said, "We leave Quickbend behind. As for retaking the city, I mean to try." After a long moment, Perrin grinned. He said, "Glad to hear it." The march of the white-faced Barghest had been slow, tortuous. Early on, during the southward journey across the high plains, sudden duels brought the clans to a halt a half dozen times a day. Dude, I'll tell you what, it is amazing these people can get anything done with all the dueling going on.
Dude.
I wonder if it's this bad when the tribes aren't all near each other.
Do you imagine it's like this with the Klingons? I've never, ever, and I mean never, have I ever made a Star Trek reference on this show, I don't believe. Nothing against the Trekkies, but do you think it's like that? I mean, I would just let them go to the side. It's like, okay,
I don't know enough about the Klingons to say one way or another.
They seem pretty violent folk. But these guys, yeah, it's like I would just have to keep driving and say, okay, just keep moving. You guys sort it out. I don't care. It's like, I ain't got time to watch this stuff. Let's go. All these people have to see it happen, though, apparently. You know, it's got to be seen. It's got to be witnessed, I guess, to make it valid, I guess. I don't know.
It reminds me of the Fremen a little bit.
Yeah. Not unlike.
It's a tribal situation. Maybe it's quite common among warrior tribes where honor is a really big thing. So this is how you settle disputes instead of talking it out.
Back to your original point, which I did not address, I'm sorry, is the fact that, yes, I imagine that as they get further away from each other, maybe it gets a bit better. I mean, the tribes, as they get, you know, and also maybe with a job to do and a little bit of distance, we can get it done. It
reminds me of Mappo talking about how they used to go and move the hearthstones of the rival tribes, and then they'd chip the tips of their knives.
Yeah.
That's some pretty serious stuff. I imagine similar shenanigans go on with the Barghest as well.
Yeah. But they seem, I don't know, do you think so? Or did they just cut right to the, you looked at me, so like, I'm calling you out. It's like the Wild West. Or is it more like the Wild West?
I don't know. All we've seen is them all together so far.
You got your peanut butter in my chocolate.
You can't contaminate the peanut butter. That always gets me when someone gets jelly in the peanut butter jar. I don't really eat jelly, Kamraun. I'm pretty much a peanut butter fella. You don't put any sweetener with your peanut butter?
Absolutely not. I love jelly on toast.
Okay, I don't really eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
But yeah, that's other than, I imagine they're popular at your place, big time.
Yeah, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, yeah. A couple of my household practically live on it. Maybe 40% of their calories come from peanut butter and jelly. That's an exaggeration, but they're eaten quite often.
Sure. These are growing lads and gal.
Yeah. The duels were finally diminishing, and Humbrol Tar's decision to assign entire clans to specific tasks in the upcoming battle would effectively remove the opportunity in the days to come. For all that every war chief had bowed to the single cause, the liberation of their gods, long-standing enmities persisted. Trotz's new role as war chief of the Bridgeburners had proved something of a relief for Perrin. He'd hated the responsibility of command. The pressure that was the well-being of every soldier under him had been a growing burden. As second in command, that pressure had diminished, if only slightly, but it was, for now, enough. Less pleasant was the fact that Perrin had lost his role as representative of the Bridgeburners. Trotz had taken on the task of attending the war councils, leaving Perrin out of the picture. In the strictest sense, Perrin remained in command of the Bridgeburners, but the company had become a tribe, insofar as Humbrol Tar and the Barghest were concerned, and tribes elected war chiefs, and that role belonged to Trotz. The hills behind them, the Bridgeburners moved down to the muddy verges of a seasonal stream that wound its way towards the city. Smoke from Kapustan's fires obscured the stars overhead, and the rain of the past few days had softened the ground underfoot, lending it a spongy silence. Armor and weapons had been strapped tight. The Bridgeburners padded forward through the darkness without a sound. Perrin was 3 paces behind Trotz, who still held to his old role in Whiskey Jack's squad, that of taking point. Not the ideal position for the commander, but one that complemented the Barghest role of war chief. Perrin was not happy with it. Worse, it showed Trotz's stubborn side all too clearly, a lack of adaptability that was disturbing in a leader. Yeah, you would definitely want an adaptable individual in charge of soldiers. Battle is too variable to not be able to adapt to the situation.
Absolutely. You got to be flexible, man. War is always fluid. and you got to be able to think around the corners. And that's something I've always admired about a lot of folks. You've always been very good at that when we work together. I'm good at reacting, but I'm not a very proactive thinker, and I've always admired that about folks.
Yeah, grandmasters in chess think 15 steps ahead. I'm happy with 3.
Right?
If you can at least think of a couple steps ahead, you're probably in pretty good shape.
Yeah. Dude,
that's my goal normally.
This is why I play checkers.
An invisible presence seemed to settle on his shoulder, the touch of a distant, familiar mind. Perrin grimaced. His link with Silver Fox was growing stronger. This was the 3rd time she had reached out to him this week. A faint brush of awareness, like the touching of fingers, tip to tip. He wondered if that made her able to see what he saw, wondered if she was reading his thoughts. Given all that he held within himself, Perrin was beginning to instinctively recoil from her contact. His secrets were his own. She had no right to plunder them, if that was what she was doing. Even tactical necessity could not justify that to his mind. His frown deepened as her presence lingered. He thought, if it is her, what if... Ahead, Trot stopped, settling into a crouch, one hand raised. He gestured twice. Perrin and the soldier immediately behind him moved to join Trot's. They had reached the Panyon's north pickets. The encampment was a shambles, bereft of organization, sloppily prepared and seriously undermanned. Litter cluttered the trodden paths between trenches, pits, and the ragged sprawl of makeshift tents. The air was redolent with poorly placed latrines. Coming back to our conversation a couple of weeks ago about the Panyon military, it seems that the rules there have also broken down just like that of society, which has become the Teniscowry Horde. I doubt a military of 100,000 soldiers could have gotten that large without some rules and discipline to govern them.
I agree. Else, what would keep you moving? I know hunger counts for something, but this moving like an army forward, that requires discipline. So I'm curious to see the breakdown here, but some of it could be, maybe it's just appearances. I know that they appear kind of dirty anyhow. A lot of that is I have just bad images of these people regardless because of what they do. And the cannibalism and the necrophilia, all that kind of fun stuff. It's kind of like, hey, I kind of have a bad opinion of you folks. I'm not trying to.
I was under the impression that the military was eating normal food, and only the Teniscowry were the ones that were being forced to be cannibals.
Oh.
Am I mistaken?
Yeah, you're mistaken. They're all cannibals.
Really?
Yes, I believe it was pointed out when the military captains were eating in one of those scenes. They were eating people. And one of those early encounters with them, we saw that they were eating people too. So they eat, but they eat better because they get the first dibs, I'm assuming. But I'm pretty sure that I thought that was definitely confirmed early on.
Because they served Lady Envy and Talk venison or something.
Yes, they were just fed a dinner at that thing when we first met the Panyons. And... right, and that's when he wakes up with all the action going on because I'm assuming they were drugged or something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming she was not, but she knows well. And I guess I have no idea. I'm assuming she could detect whether there's something bad or good, and she probably didn't care about her. But I think it was confirmed. I can't remember where in the city when Talk does decide to roll with them. No, that was way too early. I can't remember where it was, but I think it was confirmed that the military was also eating people.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember that. I remember there were bones on either side of the ramp leading up to the Sears Tower.
Yeah.
But aside from that...
What about when we were in Prince Jalarkin's palace last week?
Only the Teniscowry were at the table eating him. The Seerdamen were behind. They came out from behind the throne.
But they were present, though. Why would they have been there unless they weren't part of that same kind of stuff? Because when Annister was there... Yeah,
they're guarding an Aster.
Just guarding an Aster? Okay.
That's the impression that I got.
For some reason, I just I know the Seerdamen weren't necessarily eaten at that moment, but I'm assuming that, they have been eating. I don't know. We'll have to look into deeper to that. I'm not sure. I just thought they were eating folks too. It's the only thing that makes sense to me.
I thought all of the regular food was being saved for the military. We'll look it up and see.
Yeah.
The 3 bridge burners studied the scene for a moment longer, then withdrew to rejoin the others. The squad sergeant slipped forward. A huddle was formed. Spindle, who had been the soldier accompanying Perrin, was the first to speak. He whispered, "Medium infantry on station, 2 small companies by the pair of standards." Trot said, 200, more in the tents, sick and wounded. Spindle said, "Mostly sick, I'd say. Dysentery, I'd guess, by the smell. These Panyon officers ain't worth dung. Them sick ones won't be in the fighting no matter what we do. Guess everyone else is in the city." Trots growled, "The gate's beyond." Perrin nodded and said, "Lots of bodies before it. 1,000 corpses, maybe more. No barricades at the gates themselves, nor could I see any guard. The overconfidence of victors." Anstey muttered, "We gotta punch through them medium infantry. Spindle, how are you and the rest of the sappers from Moranth Munitions?" Spindle grinned, then said, "Found your nerve again, eh, Anstey?" Anstey scowled. He said, "This is fighting, ain't it? Now answer my question, soldier." Spindle said, "We got plenty. Wish we had a few of them lobbers Fiddler makes, though." Perrin blinked, then recalled the oversized crossbows Fiddler and Hedge used to extend the range of cussers. He said, "Doesn't Hedge have one?" Spindle said, "He broke it, the idiot." "No, we'll prime some cussers, but that'll be just for sewing. Sharpers tonight. Burners would make too much light. Let the enemy see how few of us there really are. Sharpers. I'll gather the lads and lasses." Perrin muttered, "I thought you were a mage," as Spindle turned towards the waiting squads. Spindle glanced back and said, "I am, Captain, and I'm a sapper, too. Deadly combination, eh?"
It's a pretty scary thought, isn't it?
It is. Terrifying.
It's very terrifying. That's why I think this is the effectiveness of the bridge burners is summed up here. It's not just that they're soldiers who are kind of crazy. They're soldiers, and some of them are mages, and they're crazy.
Yeah. Anstey said, "Deadly for us. That and your damned hair shirt." Spindle said, "Hey, the burnt patches are growing back, see?" Trotz growled, "Get to it." Spindle started tagging off squad sappers. The fact that that hair shirt is repairing itself adds to the horror of the hair shirt. It makes me think that there is some validity to the fact that Spindle's mother's spirit is somehow tied to that thing.
She's got to be, man. Remember, I can't remember who it was, but...
It was Picker.
Picker, okay. She saw the knuckle imprints just kind of appear on his head, right?
Yes.
I forgot the comment. It's probably lewd and it wasn't really dirty.
Yeah, she was telling him to go get with a woman one of the night that they were allowed to let loose.
Yeah, that's what it was. Right before the Barghest stuff, right at the so she gets this, racks him on the head from the great beyond.
Poor guy.
The great beyond right over his left shoulder, apparently. It's just, and all around his body. It's like, dude, lose the shirt, bro. At least occasionally.
Perrin said, "So we just punch right through. With the sharpers, that should be no problem. But then the ones on the outside flanks will sweep in behind us." Spindle rejoined them in time to grunt and say, "That's why we'll sew cussers, Captain. 2 drops on the wax. 10 heartbeats. The words run, and when we shout it, that's what you'd better do. And fast. If you're less than 30 paces away when they go up, you're diced liver." Trotz addressed Spindle and asked, "You ready?" Spindle said, "Aye, 9 of us. So expect just under 30 paces wide, the path we carve." Trotz said, "Weapons out." Then he reached out and gripped Spindle's hair shirt and dragged him close. Trotz grinned and said, "No mistakes." Spindle said, "No mistakes," eyes widening as Trotz clacked his sharpened teeth inches from his face. Man, that's like Iceman in Top Gun.
I'm sorry. I still have never seen that. Sorry.
Shame. Shame. There's a pretty famous scene where Val Kilmer does that exact thing to Tom Cruise in Top Gun, where he clacks his teeth right in front of his face.
All right.
A moment later, Spindle and his 8 fellow sappers were moving towards the enemy lines, hooded and shapeless in their rain capes. The presence brushed Perrin's awareness once again. He did all he could in his mind to push it away. The acid in his stomach swirled, murmuring a promise of pain. He drew a deep breath to steady himself and thought, if swords clash, it will be my first. After all this time, my first battle. That's crazy. I can't believe after all he's been through, this is the first engagement he'll be a part of. Add the stress of his first battle to all the other stress he's experiencing, and it truly shows just how resilient he is.
Dude, that's just the stress talking, dude. Just because he's not seen battle does not, like you said, does not even imply or mean that he's not seen any action. Dude, the hounds, all that stuff, just not battle experience. Compared to everything else he's been through, war might be the easiest thing for him to do.
Gruntle said that there was a marked difference between waiting for a battle and doing the type of shenanigans that he would get up to as a caravan guard. Do you remember that earlier in the book?
That's true.
That's why he didn't want to be a soldier. So I get where Perrin's coming from here.
Oh, yeah. It's the jitters. It's the stage jitters.
He's been in fights.
Yes.
He was attacked by the Reeve, and Chance auto-parried a bunch of attacks for him. There was also the fight with the Hound in the chambers when he was recovering, and then there was that whole thing with Hairlock. So he has been in fights, but no large-scale battle experience, which is a whole other level of chaos.
That's true. It is. It's kind of
plus the anticipation is part of it, right?
That's the worst part. The anticipation is the worst part, I'm assuming. I say that it can't be the worst part, but it must feel like the worst part before. Until you actually get to the worst part.
Well, I imagine in the moment, everything's happening so fast that you really don't have time but to fall back to your training. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're just kind of
die.
moment to moment. The enemy medium infantry were huddled in groups, 20 or more to each of a row of hearths on the encampment's only high ground, what used to be a cart track running parallel to the city wall. Perrin judged that a path 30 paces wide would take out most of 3 groups, leaving well over 100 Panions capable of responding. If there were any capable officers among them, this could get ugly. He thought, then again, if there were any capable officers there, the squads wouldn't be clumped up in the way they are. The sappers had gone to ground. Perrin could no longer see them. Shifting his grip on his sword, he checked back over his shoulder to scan the rest of the bridge burners. Picker was at the forefront, a painful expression on her face. He was about to ask her what was wrong when detonations cracked through the night. Perrin spun round. Bodies writhed in the firelight of the now scattered hearths. Tross loosed a quavering war cry. The bridge burners sprinted forward. More sharpers exploded, out to the sides now, dropping the mobbed, confused soldiers around adjacent hearths. Perrin saw the dark forms of the sappers converging directly ahead, squatting down amidst dead and dying Panions. Crossbows thunked in the hands of the dozen or so bridge burners who carried them. Screams rang. Tross leading the way, the bridge burners reached the Charnel path, passed around the crouching sappers who were one and all readying the larger cussers. 2 drops of acid to the wax plug, sealing the hole in the clay grenado. A chorus of muted hisses. Someone shouted, "Run!" Perrin cursed. 10 heartbeats suddenly seemed no time at all. Cussers were the largest of the Maranthe munitions. A single one could make the intersection of 4 streets virtually impassable. He ran. His heart almost seized in his chest as he fixed his eyes on the gate directly ahead. The 1,000 corpses were stirring. He thought, oh damn. Not dead at all. Sleeping. The bastards were sleeping. Someone shouted, "Down, down, down!" The word was Malazan. The voice was Hedges. Perrin hesitated only long enough to see Spindle, Hedge, and the other sappers arrive among them to throw cussers. Forward. Into the massing ranks of Teniscowry between them and the gates. Then they dived flat. These sappers are an unholy terror. I will give them credit for their adaptability, but man, hand-throwing cussers is not going to get them that far from the people doing the throwing. Madmen all around.
Oh, my word. Agreed. This is pretty core here for me. Just not the whole chapter, just these moments when these guys are crazy like this and they've got no option. But when they break out the munitions and it's catastrophic like this, not for our people, but for the people facing our lovely bridge burners, it's always pretty rough, man. And it's always core.
I love this section so much. It's seeing them work. It's such a beautiful thing.
It is, man.
Now, I had a question. Of the sappers we met so far in the books, I only seem to remember 1 female in Deadhouse Gates. Do you think that men gravitate to this role more than women due to the unhinged mental state required to perform the job well?
Oh, yeah, dude. Most assuredly, women on the whole, in my experience at least, tend to be more level-headed and less inclined to being like sappers or like, say, stuntmen for the most part, you know. It's not dissimilar, you know, that kind of madness of, you know, so it's like, yeah, the women are not infected with that kind of craziness. They can be a little bit more analytical than we are, I think.
Of all the memorable ones, they're all men, for sure.
Yeah.
I just don't remember them mentioning that many females. The other units, it's all pretty even, it feels like.
Yeah.
You know, you have female heavies, you have the rogue type characters, you have the mages, but for whatever reason, the sappers seem to be the ones where it's mostly men.
Yeah, they are. They're all. Yeah, I think they're all a bit touched.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah.
Perrin shouted, "Oh, Hood," as he threw himself down, slid across gritty mud, releasing his grip on his sword and clamping both hands to his ears. The ground punched the breath from his lungs, threw his legs into the air. He thumped back down in the mud, on his back. He had time to begin his roll before the cussers directly ahead exploded. The impact sent him tumbling. Bloody shreds rained down on him. Man, hit by the blast wave from both directions.
Wow. Talk about ringing your bell. Man.
Terrible for you. A large object thumped beside Perrin's head. He blinked his eyes open to see a man's hips. Just the hips. The concavity where intestines belonged yawning black and wet. Thighs were gone, taken at the joints. Perrin stared. I know this is incredibly gruesome, but if I was making this series, as I dreamed that one day I'd have the opportunity to do, I would absolutely require this scene's inclusion. It has always left an impression on me without seeing the nasty details of the horrific aftermath of battle. it's easy to glorify the battle. The imagery of a dismembered set of hips landing next to Perrin is the perfect way to show the impact of munitions visually.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think all these war scenes, basically, any war scene in any kind of genre since Saving Private Ryan has basically got to be realistically brutal to capture the horror of war, lest it glorify it, like you said.
Yeah. Perrin's ears were ringing. He felt blood trickling from his nose. His chest ached. Distant screaming wailed through the night. A hand closed on his raincape, tugged him upright. Mallet. The healer leaned close to press the captain's sword into his hands, then shouted words Perrin barely heard. "Come on! They're all getting the hood out of here!" A shove sent Perrin stumbling forward. His eyes saw, but his mind failed to register the devastation to either side of the path they now ran towards the north gate. He felt himself shutting down inside, even as he slipped and staggered through the human ruin, shutting down as he had once before, years ago, on a road in Itko Khan. The hand of vengeance stayed cold only so long. Any soul possessing a shred of humanity could not help but see the reality behind cruel deliverance, no matter how justified it might have at first seemed. That quote is one that I had highlighted previously. It really made me think about the impact of vengeance on the person carrying it out. And I'll come back to this after the next sentence.
Okay.
Faces blank in death, bodies twisted in postures no one unbroken could achieve, destroyed lives. Vengeance yielded a mirror to every atrocity, where notions of right and wrong blurred and lost all relevance. I know the revenge movie is a popular category with men. I often wonder at how people emotionally handle the aftermath of actions they take, specifically in relation to vengeance. We've spoken of this before in the past several times. Once when we were covering The Boys, specifically Butcher's Path of Vengeance for Homelander.
Right.
And then also in Gardens of the Moon, with the scheme that Rallick and Murillo enacted against Lady Simtal?
That's a really great question, and rarely do we ever see the aftermath of the vengeance, revenge kind of in the movies. That's always to kind of glorify it, but I'm always assuming that the person getting the revenge is not made whole or happier by having gotten even. It doesn't really get you even. You don't recover anything from it. I don't even know if you get satisfaction from taking out the person who did whatever to you. So it's a bad deal. You know how I feel about vengeance and revenge. It's just better let this stuff go.
I guess it depends on what happened to you.
That's true.
There's a couple of scenarios. So Wrath of Man was one, and then Law Abiding Citizen is the other one that I think of.
Right.
And if I was put in either of those positions, how I'd feel. You know what I mean? And so that's how I think about it. And I guess for a lot of people, if you don't have kids or aren't married, it's kind of hard to feel a similar way. There might be other things that are important to you, but those are the two things that really make you wonder how you'd react.
Yeah, unless you're John Wick and it's just over a dog.
No, man, the dog symbolized more. It wasn't just about the dog, Billy. That's a gross oversimplification of what happened there.
It was. I'm so sorry.
Don't you talk about John Wick?
I'm sorry. I like the first one.
That's another one.
It's great, man. I love the first one.
They're all good to me. I really enjoyed them all.
I couldn't make it through the second one. I tried. I just couldn't make it. I was like, so I just kind of quit. Maybe I need to give it another shot.
My oldest son and we watched the first three back to back one day.
Nice. That's good,
it was before the fourth one came out.
I love Keanu Reeves. Don't get me wrong. It's nothing against Keanu Reeves and nothing against a good action flick either. It's just the first one is great and over the top and ridiculous, and each one I'm assuming just gets more and more over the top and more ridiculous. And because number 2 is just a straight out superhero movie.
The reason I enjoy watching those movies is because when I watch movies, part of what I'm watching is the way the scene is filmed and how many cuts there are in the scene.
Okay.
When the fight sequences are taking place, how much of it is the actual actor versus stunt doubles where they're cutting away so you can't see their face. Right. When I look at John Wick through that lens, I'm appreciating the level of effort and the technical ability that they brought to bear to make those movies, because I'm looking at the stunt work and the what's up?
You don't have to sell it to me.
No.
One of my favorite movies of all times is Five Deadly Venoms. I love old school kung fu movies that are terrible. I love that kind of. So nothing against the genre. It just wasn't my cup of tea. I like ridiculously wild, over the top stuff. I appreciate that too. I just want to be entertained though. Generally, it's like, do I buy this? It's like, yeah, sure, I buy this. It's like I can buy this for this next 2 hours.
So in the fourth movie in particular, they do get progressively more ridiculous from a story perspective. The fourth John Wick has a scene that is worth watching the movie just for this scene.
Okay.
He's clearing a house. It's from a top-down view, and he's got a shotgun. That's like a semi-automatic shotgun that has dragon breath rounds in it.
Oh,
and they were inspired by a video game that's kind of like Hotline Miami. My jaw dropped watching this scene in the theater because of the way they filmed it. It was so sick. So it's worth watching the movie just for that scene alone.
Is it like the highway scene in The Matrix 2? One of those where it's like, holy smokes.
Yes.
Okay.
That's why I like The Matrix 2 so much, is because of the highway scene.
The highway scene, dude.
I absolutely love it.
The highway scene is all you need. It's like, that's the...
Yes. Amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I'll check it out.
Moving along.
Keep it together.
You got anything else you want to say about John Wick?
I'm not hating, dude. Like I said, not hating.
No, I'm just messing with you, dude. All right. Perrin saw to the right and left fleeing figures. A few sharpers cracked, hastening the route. The bridge burners had announced themselves to the enemy. As he ran, Perrin thought, "We are their match in calculated brutality, but this is a war of nerves where no one wins." The unchallenged darkness of the gate swallowed Perrin and his fellow bridge burners. Boots skidded as the soldiers halted their mad sprint, dropping into crouches, reloading crossbows. Not a word spoken. Trots reached a hand out and dragged Hedge close. The Barghest shook the man hard for a moment, then made to throw him down. A squeal from Spindle stopped him. Hedge, after all, carried a leather sack half full of munitions. His face still a mass of bruises from Deteran's fond touch, Hedge cursed, "Ain't no choice, you big ape." Perrin could hear the words. An improvement. He wasn't sure who he sided with on this one, but the truth of it was, it no longer mattered. Perrin snapped, "Trots, what now? If we wait here..." Trots grunted and said, "Into the city, low and quiet." Anstey asked, "Which direction?" Trots said, "We head to the thrall." Anstey said, "Fine. And what's that?" Trots said, "The glowing keep, you thick-skulled idiot." They edged forward, out from beneath the archway's gloom, onto the concourse immediately beyond. Their steps slowed as flickering firelight revealed the nightmare before them. There had been vast slaughter, and then there had been a feast. The cobbles were ankle-deep in bones, some charred, others red and raw with bits of tendon and flesh still clinging to them. And fully 2/3 of the dead, Perrin judged from what he could see of uniforms and clothing, belonged to the invaders. What a visual. I feel like any imagery of the Panyan Daman territories would need to be littered in bones at this point.
That's exactly how I'd imagine. And especially it's, as you follow them, if you ever wanted to follow their trail, I imagine you find nothing but bones everywhere they go. And I keep referring to this. I don't think you've ever seen it, but there is a subgenre of cannibal movies, or a subgenre of exploitation movies that are the cannibal genre. But it reminds me of Apocalypse Now, Redo Always, where there's this temple scene where they're in some place in Cambodia. They've crossed over into Cambodia, and they're at this temple. It looks like they're using Angkor Wat. It's not, but it's something with these ancient temples there out in the forest. As you approach it, you get your eyeball. All these people are tribally dressed, but there's mountains of heads and bones everywhere before you even get to start seeing the people. And this is I always feel like this every time this image is always hammered into me about the Panyan Daman. Is this to me?
Mm-hmm. Perrin muttered, "Gods, the Panyans paid dearly." He thought, "I think I should revise my estimation of the gray swords." Spindle nodded and said, "Even so, numbers will tell." Mallet said, "A day or two earlier." No one bothered finishing the thought. There was no need. Anstey demanded, "What's your problem, Picker?" Picker snapped, "Nothing! It's nothing." Hedge said, "Is that the thrall then? That glowing dome? There, through the smoke?" Trots cut in, "Let's go." The bridge burners, ranging out cautiously in Trot's wake, they set forth, across the grisly concourse, to a main avenue that seemed to lead directly towards the thrall. The style of the houses and tenement blocks to either side, those that were still standing, were distinctly Daru to Perrin's eyes. The rest of the city, he saw from fragmented glimpses down side alleys and avenues where fires still burned, was completely different, vaguely alien. And everywhere, bodies. Further down the street, piles of still-fleshed corpses rose like the slope of a hill. The bridge burners said nothing as they neared that slope. The truth before them was difficult to comprehend. On this street alone, there were at least 10,000 bodies, maybe more, sodden, already swollen, the flesh pale around gaping, blood-drained wounds, concentrated mounds around building entrances, alley mouths, an estate's gate, the stepped approaches to gutted temples. Faces and sightless eyes reflected flames, making expressions seem to writhe in mocking illusion of animation, of life. To continue on the street, the bridgeburners would have to climb that slope. Trotz did not hesitate. Word arrived from the small company's rearguard. Tenniscourie had entered through the gate, were keeping pace like silent ghosts behind them. A few hundred, no more than that. Poorly armed. No trouble. Trotz simply shrugged at the news. They scrambled their way up the soft, flesh-laden ramp. Perrin thought, do not look down. Do not think of what is underfoot. Think only of the defenders who must have fought on. Think of courage almost inhuman, defying mortal limits. Of these gray swords, those motionless, uniformed corpses in those doorways, crowding the alley mouths, fighting on, yielding nothing, cut to pieces where they stood. These soldiers humble us all. A lesson for the bridgeburners around me. This brittle, heartbroken company. We've come to a war devoid of mercy. The ramp had been fashioned. There was an intention to its construction. It was an approach. To what? It ended in a tumbled heap, at a level less than a man's height below the roof of a tenement block. Opposite the building there had been another just like it, but fire had reduced it to smoldering rubble. Trotz stopped at the ramp's very edge. The rest followed suit, crouching down, looking around, trying to comprehend the meaning of all that they saw. The ragged end revealed the truth. There was no underlying structure to this ghastly construct. It was indeed solid bodies. I wonder how many of the roughly 10,000 bodies it took to build this ramp were cut down by Gruntle and his company.
I just kind of made the assumption it's almost all of them. I guess it could be there would be some gray swords in there doing some of this damage because Perrin has come to this, remember, not even 3 pages back talking about, my previous, how I felt about mercenaries to having like, good gracious, they humble us. He's had a totally reevaluation of the gray swords. So gray swords had to have done a pretty fair number here too, I would assume.
That's crazy if he killed most of those people, him and his followers.
I think they killed the majority though. Well, let's just say at least half. Would you think at least half?
Yeah, because the gray swords, they got taken out fairly early. This ramp wasn't in the picture at that point.
Yeah, then it's going to be Gruntle and gang.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, it is. Fueled by, we're having Ascendant Rising, I guess, or something going on here.
Yeah. Finally, Spindle broke the silence. He quietly said, a siege ramp. They wanted to get to somebody. They heard a low voice from above them say, us. Crossbows snapped up. Perrin looked to the tenement building's roof. A dozen figures lined its edge. Distant firelight lit them. The voice continued in Daru. They brought ladders. We beat them anyway. These warriors were not gray swords. They were armored, but it was a ragtag collection of accoutrements. One and all, their faces and exposed skin were daubed in streaks and barbs, like human tigers. That surprised me. Even Gruntle's followers got their markings.
And see, last episode, remember the men felt like there was something going on with the eyes. Remember the way they looked at him and the fact there was no talking. And I brought this up, and we weren't sure if Gruntle was sharing his power or not. But I believe this to indicate that he's some kind of sharing going on here.
Yeah, for sure. That sentence, the way I took it was that they were reflecting their awe of him back at him.
Right.
But there was another mention of some type of aura because they weren't tiring, really. They were all able to continue fighting, right? So it was almost like he had something that was giving them energy or letting them keep up.
Yeah, just a nice backup. I mean, it's like they're still eating and drinking, it seems like. But, it's like other than that, it's like they've got energy, plenty of reserves, not really tired. You're not tired, you're not amped up. They're fighting very cohesively. It's really cool.
Mm-hmm. In Daru, Hedge called up, I like the paint. Scared the crap out of me, that's for sure. The spokesman, tall and hulking, bone-white, black-barbed cutlasses in his mailed hands, cocked his head. He said, it's not paint, Malazan. Silence. Then the man gestured with a blade and said, come up if you like. Ladders appeared from the rooftop, slid down its edge. Trotz hesitated. Perrin stepped close. He said, I think we should. There's something about that man and his followers. Trotz snorted. He asked, really? He waved the bridge burners to the ladders. Man, what a sarcastic bastard. I'm reminded of the scene in Aliens when Sergeant Apone gets onto Bill Paxton's character, Private First Class William L. Hudson. That's the assholes and elbows speech.
You said it.
Trotz needs some of that.
Yeah, and now you said it, and I have to watch it now. But Paxton's greatest line, I love Paxton in that movie so much. He's so funny. But they've got the great line. It's like, it's dry heat, though. It's like, I always love Paxton because of course, he's a fellow Texan. R.I.P. Bill Paxton.
R.I.P. Man, that was a recent loss too. I feel
That's
like
a pretty
at least
recent
last
loss.
couple years. Yeah, and he
Right
was
after-
youngish.
Yeah, he died on the operating table.
Yeah.
He was having
And then
heart
William
surgery.
Hurt also was pretty recent because
Yeah.
I was wondering why they replaced his character in the latest Captain America movie that came out.
Yes.
Because Harrison Ford plays the same character, and
Yes.
I think he had pancreatic cancer or something like that.
Yeah.
He was
something
relatively
like that.
young as well. If you all want to see that little clip I'm referring to, just look up Assholes and Elbows Aliens, and you'll get a real short clip. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It's great.
It was fantastic, dude.
That's the kind of
is
sergeant you want.
fantastic, dude. I love Apone, man. He's a magnificent guy.
He did an amazing job in that movie.
Oh, absolutely. I'd follow that guy anywhere, dude. Could he be one of our...
Yes.
He could be... There's a place for him here in the universe. In our cinematic universe of the Malazan universe.
I bet Robert Downey Jr. partially based his character in Tropic Thunder off of him.
Oh. Probably so. Probably so.
I mean, he did an amazing job as the sergeant of that squad.
Oh, he's fantastic, dude.
Perrin watched the ascent, deciding he would be the last to go. He saw Picker hanging back. He asked, "Problem, Corporal?" She flinched, massaging her right arm. Perrin said, "You're in pain," moving to her side, studying her pinched face. He said, "Did you take a wound? Let's go to Mallet." Picker said, "He can't help me, Captain. Never mind about it." Perrin thought, "I know precisely how you feel." He said, "Climb then." As if approaching gallows, Picker made her way to the nearest ladder. Perrin glanced back down the ramp. Spectral figures moved in the gloom at its far base, well out of any kind of missile range. Unwilling, perhaps, to ascend the slope, Perrin wasn't surprised at that. Fighting twinges, he began climbing. The tenement's flat roof had the look of a small shanty town. Tarps and tents, hearths smoldering on overturned shields, food packs, caskets of water and wine, a row of blanket-wrapped figures, the fallen, 7 in all. Perrin could see others in some of the tents, most likely wounded. A standard had been raised near the roof's trapdoor, the yellow flag nothing more than a dark-streaked child's tunic.
So, if I'm not mistaken, weren't there 16 or 17 when they got on the roof last we left Gruntle? And so we've lost 7 of those. He was right. They've released about 7 a floor. That's amazing. The attrition on the other side is horrific compared to their losses.
Yeah, they did an amazing job.
Each one of these people are killing them by the hundreds. Each one of Gruntle's men are killing 100 to 300 men minimum apiece.
Yeah, they couldn't burn the building down. They had no choice but to go in and fight man to man, and there was no way to get to them besides 1 or 2 at a time. And in that scenario, it's like they found the perfect way to defend themselves.
That's awesome. That's always core about these guys.
What a core memory.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
The Jello mold of meat.
The Jello mold of death.
Yes. Hood's mold.
Hood's moldy mold. MOULDY mold.
We've had some moldy bones as well, right? So, all right.
Oh, Hood. Move along.
The warriors stood silent, watchful as Trot sent squads out to each corner of the roof, where they checked on whatever lay both below and opposite the building. Their spokesman turned suddenly, a fluid, frighteningly graceful motion, and faced Corporal Picker. He rumbled, "You have something for me." Her eyes widened. She said, "What?" He sheathed one of his cutlasses and stepped up to her. Perrin and the others nearby watched as the man reached out to Picker's right arm. He gripped her chain-sleeved bicep. A muted clatter sounded. Picker gasped. After a moment, she dropped her sword to clunk on the tarred rooftop and began stripping off her chain surcoat with quick, jerky motions. In a flood of relief, she said, "Beru's blessing. I don't know who in Hood's name you are, sir, but they've been killing me, getting tighter and tighter. God's the pain. He said they'd never come off. He said they'd be on me for good. Even Quick Ben said that, can't make a deal with Treach. The Tiger of Summer's mad, insane." The man cut in. "Dead." Half out of her surcoat, Picker froze. She whispered, "What? Dead? Treach is dead?" The man said, "The Tiger of Summer has ascended, woman. Treach, Trake, now strides with the gods. I will have them now, and I thank you for delivering them to my hand." She pulled her right arm clear of the chain sleeve. 3 ivory arm torques clattered down to her hand. She said, "Here. Yes, please. Glad to oblige." Auntie snapped, "Hood, take your tongue, Picker. You're embarrassing us. Just give him the damn things." Picker stared about. She said, "Blend. Where in the abyss you hiding, woman?" A voice beside Perrin murmured, "Here." Startled, Perrin stepped back. He thought, damn her. Again, on the topic of how I would film this, I would love to have characters jump slightly every time they were startled by Blend.
Agreed.
You could film them so that they block her out of the frame visually, and then she moves into view and speaks simultaneously and startles them right when that happens. I love it. It's an amazing running joke.
It is a great running joke. It would on film, it would need to be there because we need these moments.
Yes. After the horror of what we just went through.
Yes.
Between the completely separated hips that were empty and then the 10,000 bodies piled up as a ramp. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty gnarly.
And the field of bones.
Yeah.
Picker crowed, "Ha! You hear me, Blend? Ha!" I also love that the first thing Picker has to do is point out to Blend that she was wrong. It's so petty.
Oh, I love it, dude. Bridge burners, baby. Bridge burners. Always.
These two crack me up.
Oh, they're great. They're some of the funniest conversants, aren't they? A lot of times, Picker and Blend.
Yeah. The squads were converging once more. The Daru rolled up a tattered sleeve. The stripe pattern covered the large, well-defined muscles of his arm. He slid the 3 torques up past the elbow. The ivory clicked. Something flashed amber in the darkness beneath the rim of his helmet. Perrin studied the man. He thought, a beast resides within him, an ancient spirit reawakened. Power swirled around the Daru, but Perrin sensed that it was born as much from a natural air of command as from the beast hiding within him. For that beast preferred solitude. Its massive strength had, somehow, been almost subsumed by the quality of leadership. He thought, together a formidable union. There's no mistaking, this one's important. Something's about to happen here, and my presence is no accident. He said, I am Captain Perrin, one of One Arm's host. The man said, took your time, didn't you, Malazan? Perrin blinked. He said, we did the best we could, sir. In any case, your relief this night and tomorrow will come from the Whiteface clans. The man said, Hitan and Kefal's father, Humbral Tar. Good. Time's come to turn the tide. Ansi sputtered, turn the tide? Looks like you didn't need no help to turn the tide, man. Hedge called out, Trots, I ain't happy about what's underfoot. There's cracks. This whole roof is nothing but cracks. Another sapper noted, same for the walls, all sides. A small warrior in Lestari armor said, this building is filled with bodies. They're swelling, I guess. His eyes still on the big Daru, Perrin asked, do you have a name? The man said, Gruntle. Perrin asked, are you some kind of sect or something? Temple warriors? Gruntle slowly faced him, his expression mostly hidden beneath the helm's visor. He said, no, we are nothing. No one. This is for a woman, and now she's dying. Mallet interrupted, which tent? Gruntle said, the warren of Denul is poisoned. Mallet said, you feel that, do you, Gruntle? Curious. He waited, then asked again, which tent? Gruntle's Lestari companion pointed and said, there. She was stuck through bad. Blood in the lungs. She might already be... He fell silent. Perrin followed Mallet to the tattered shelter. The woman lying within was pale, her young face drawn and taut. Frothy blood painted her lips. Stani is having a rough time. A lot of trauma, both physically and mentally, in the last couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah. And what is that quote that started the siege? About not surviving the siege?
Oh, yeah. If you can, friend, do not ever live through a siege, I believe is what it was.
Yeah. It's pretty rough business.
Yeah, and they lost Harlow before that, too, so...
Yeah, they lost Harlow before they hit town, yeah.
Bad. Perrin thought, and here, there's more. He watched Mallet settle to his knees beside her, reach out his hands. Perrin growled, hold it. The last time damn near killed you. Mallet said, not my gift, Captain. Got Barghast spirits crowding me with this one, sir. Again. Don't know why. Someone's taken a personal interest, maybe. It may be too late anyway. We'll see, all right? After a moment, Perrin nodded. Mallet laid his hands on the unconscious woman and closed his eyes. A dozen heartbeats passed. He finally whispered, aye, layers here. Wounded flesh, wounded spirit. I shall need to mend both. So, will you help me? Perrin realized the question was not being asked of him, and so made no reply. Mallet, eyes still closed, sighed. He asked, you will sacrifice so many for this woman? He paused, eyes still closed, then frowned and said, I can't see these threads you speak of. Not her, nor Gruntle, nor the man at my side. Perrin thought, at your side? Me? Threads? Gods, why don't you just leave me alone? Mallet went on, but I'll take your word for it. Shall we begin? Moments passed. Mallet motionless above the woman. Then she stirred on her pallet and softly moaned. The tent was torn from around them, guide wires snapping. Perrin's head jerked up in surprise, to see Gruntle, chest heaving, standing above them. Gruntle gasped, What? What? He staggered back a step, was brought up by Trot's firm hands on his shoulders. Trots growled, no such thing as too late. Approaching, Ansi grinned. He said, hello, Kapustan. the bridge burners have arrived.
Nice.
And what a great stopping point.
Absolutely agreed. Amazing.
That was an eventful section of the chapter so far.
Right?
Started out rough, but we got the bridge burners, so made up for it.
Yes, it did.
Standout moments. Not an enjoyable thing, but finding out what's been happening to Talk since we last saw him.
Agreed. I'm glad to see him. I'm glad he's alive. I hope he will be okay.
Man, I don't know. Between all the grinding of the bones and the healing and him being all damaged and then losing his mind partially, not a good outlook.
Talking about trauma upon trauma, like Mallet was just talking about Stani, this makes that look like nothing.
Oh, yeah. He was already in rough shape mentally because of the loss of the eye.
Yeah. Well, he was doing okay with that. It's just being hurled into a warren for how long, we don't know. Lost.
Oh, yeah, the Warren of Chaos, by the way.
Yeah. So it's dude, poor Talk. He's like the cosmic jester. Like he's like the jester of the, not funny, but he's like the fool of the universe, of the multiverse. He just takes a whooping.
If it wasn't for bad luck, I wouldn't have no luck at all.
That's right. It's a good Cream song.
Seeing the final assault on Outlook by Gareth, Baljag, and Tool. It's impressive that they scared the seer so much that he had to flee. And it kind of makes you wonder at the power levels involved. I thought Jagut were supposed to be very powerful.
Well, I'm assuming that they're obviously very powerful. But, like you said, we know that she is an elder god's daughter, correct? So it's kind of like that may not compare.
She wasn't there with them. So I think what made them flee was that, well, I guess she might have been around. Talk just saw the three of them, Gareth, Baljag, and Tool. And I don't know where Lady Envy was. She wasn't immediately there.
Oh, that's true. He was just seeing yeah, that's true.
For some reason, I thought she was coming after them in the Warren.
That's what I would have thought. That's the only one that I would have thought. Well, I guess, can Tool follow through the Warrens?
Wasn't it said at one point that Talani Mas can and have gone into Amtos Falak in the past?
Well, if they can and have, then that may have been Tool. So if he's running, is he running just from Tool?
No, I think they mentioned it was Lady Envy that was assaulting it.
Okay, so they're all together. He's not seeing her. She's just there she's the, what would you call it, the artillery support?
Yeah, that heavy artillery.
Heavy artillery, there we go. She's your heavy artillery from about 6 miles out. She's just like raining down, and Tool and Gareth and Baljag are up close. And Lord knows where the
she's like the space laser.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is.
Another thing that stuck out was the physical toll that final assault took on Baljag and Gareth. They both got wounded pretty badly there.
Yeah, I hope they're going to be okay, man. I really do.
Mm-hmm. Seeing the bridge burners get to work again. It was a nice contrast to the misery of finding out what's been going on with Talk.
Agreed, sir. It's especially because we needed some bridge burner annex to kind of lighten the mood before it doubles down again and gets heavy.
The sappers using the cussers behind and then in front of the charge through the Panion forces.
Oh, it's absolutely amazing, dude. I got to see that. That would be hilarious to see. I'll say not hilarious. It'd be pretty gnarly to see, but I got to see that.
Yeah, it's a great action sequence.
Absolutely.
Those dismembered hips that landed next to Perrin after the cussers hit the Teniscari, that was an image that when I read that sentence immediately popped up in my head. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
It stuck with me. There's a lot of stuff that happens in these books, but that one stuck with me.
Yeah, there's some real nastiness. Yeah, and you're right. That does stick with you. And that's because for some reason, I say this to be no disrespectful. Not in disrespect, because I'm a huge fan of our veterans, but can you imagine what it was like being around in one of those wars like that, like World War II? Can you imagine the sheer amount of carnage and stuff flying around you? I mean, I know stories of guys constantly, you'll talk about, friends talking to a guy 1 second, his head blown off and covered you got your best friend's brains all over you the next minute. So, I mean, the sheer amount, just by the volume of stuff blowing up, the volume of bodies being around, there's got to be a lot of stuff in the air.
Yeah, I remember some specific pictures from World War I that remind me of that. Because the shelling and the trench warfare, there's some imagery from that sticks out to me.
Did you ever see 1917?
No, I haven't watched it yet.
It's pretty good. Real time. That's got some really gruesome imagery it's very like that. Broken bodies all over the place.
That's one of those ones I've been meaning to watch because it was filmed in a way that makes it look like it was one take straight. I mean, obviously they couldn't do it that way.
Yeah, that's the only thing I've ever really fascinated with is real-time movies, because they are usually how I understood it, at least in the past, most takes are usually 2 to 3 minutes, mostly. Maybe sometimes 5 at the very outmost, but a real-time film is usually filmed in 10-minute chunks. And so it's got to be really mapped out, really beautifully acted, beautifully executed, and you got to hide. Yeah, they work hard to hide the cuts. That's the only time I really look for cuts is in real time movies. I'm like, where are they hiding the cut?
I remember when I saw Children of Men in the theater. That was the first movie that I remember where there was a really long extended cut in an action sequence. That one, I recently watched it again, and it seemed awfully short compared to some of the stuff that I've seen coming after that.
Right.
But at the time, it had felt really long. In terms of action movies, there's one of those Tony Jaa movies, The Protector. He's one of those Thai martial artists. If you haven't seen this movie, there is a scene where it's like some restaurant where it's some gang that has animals that are on the endangered species list and people are eating them.
Sure.
And they've kidnapped his elephant, so he's trying to get his elephant back.
Okay.
His family has elephants in a sanctuary. They raise them, and then I think they take them because the king might want to adopt one of them or something, and then the elephant gets kidnapped. So the whole story is he's trying to get his elephant back, and he goes to this restaurant that might have had the elephant. He's working his way up this spiral staircase thing, and it's a long shot. For some reason, the 14 minutes sticks out to me, but it's like an extended action fight sequence that's done by Steadicam for 14 minutes or something. That's ridiculous, dude.
I think when I think of ones, the longest one I have is the hallway scene in the original Old Boy.
Oh, yeah, of course. One of the classics.
Yeah. And other than that, we need to move along. I'm sorry. I'm excited about Kung Fu stuff. New Daredevil started, too. I'm waiting.
Oh, yeah. Sure. Yeah. All right. Next thing that stuck out to me was the flesh ramp that the Panions constructed to assault Gruntle's headquarters.
Gruesome yet enterprising.
Use the materials at hand.
Exactly. Got no trees. You can't make siege ramps out of trees. Stack them deep.
Mm-hmm. The realization of the setup with the Torques and Picker from early in the book. Back to the topic of how Gruntle was selected. Picker received those Torques before Treach was killed and before Gruntle traversed the river Catlin at the beginning of the book. So there's some stuff going on here, almost like things are being put in place at a higher level.
Very much so, and I love how going through it at the level you and I are going through help expose this for it to be seen easier. I really like that.
Yeah. And I wonder what happened when Gruntle put on those Torques and then there was a flash of orange light under his helm.
Dude. Got the Wonder Twin powers activating?
I don't know, man. Something's going on under there.
Yeah, he leveled up.
Maybe he lost part of himself.
He may have.
Maybe that's where it's less Gruntle.
It could be.
We'll see.
But I think he truly leveled up for sure.
Yeah. Finally, the Barghast spirit's willing to sacrifice so many souls to heal Stani, and that hints at how important her survival is to all that's going on at this time.
Wow. I know that's kind of wild. It's like, I'm trying to think of why is her survival important? It's intriguing.
Because she's connected to Gruntle. And
Gruntle?
Then
okay.
I presume Gruntle needs to be present for what is to come. So whatever powers are at play here.
And she also made vows to Karuli, didn't she? Now she's...
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, wow.
All right, great job tonight, Billy.
Hey, man. Really great time. Good chapter.
You got any final thoughts before we drop off here?
Just what a start to this chapter. We're getting a lot of core memories into some of this violence, but I can't wait to get through this. I'm not sure how many episodes, but I'm looking forward to it. And back to John Wick, I'm not hating. I love ridiculous kung fu. Kill Bill it's ridiculous, but
Yeah. Yeah, so, I was just trying to say the reason I enjoy them so much is not so much the story. It's really more of
the technical,
what it took to make them.
Sure.
And the artistry that's involved in that. So that's why I enjoy them. So I could see if you're not looking at it from that perspective, I could see if the story is that all that matters to you. It's just a ridiculous story, Right. So
well, it's not the story. I like
it.
I like action. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, look at Kill Bill. It's wall to wall blood and gore by swords and kung fu. So I mean,
there's so much dialogue in that, though.
It's Tarantino.
As with any Quentin Tarantino movie. It's been a while since I watched those back to back. I actually like the second one better than the first one. How about you?
I do too. I like them both. I like them both so much, but number 2, you get the cruel tutelage of Pai Mei, please. That's just, that's right up my kung fu alley.
The Mike Madsen one, for whatever reason,
Oh.
I like the Mike Madsen sequence.
He scares me. That's why. It's ever since Reservoir Dogs, he's horrified me, dude. It's Reservoir Dogs. Can you hear me?
His boss.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
No. I'm talking about, when he's talking to the ear, he cut off the
oh
top
god,
of
it's
Reservoir
terrible.
Dogs.
Yeah. When he's talking to his boss at the strip club, and he's like, "Do I look like I got an asshole right here?" And he points at his elbow.
Right here. I love that guy, dude. There's some great dialogue in those movies. My word. Oh my good gracious.
All right, thanks everybody. We'll see you next week.
Hey, we'll see y'all next week.
We thank you all for joining us today.
Again, we really like to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we've had a really great time talking about the topic today.
If you would like to support our show, you can find us at horsefrogproductions.com, where you can find our Patreon link. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description.
And if you'd like to contact us through email, it's at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.